Welcome to the Redline Podcast, featuring co-presenters Bo, the Banksy of LinkedIn and founder at Javelin Content Management, Shane, CEO at Sales Driven, and Antoine, co-founder at Sales Driven, master of storytelling. Each week we will bring you advice, tips, and thoughts about sales, leadership, and share our experience on growing an effective business. Meet guests, enjoy the stories, and most importantly, have fun. This is Redline.
Welcome to episode 3 of the Redline Podcast, everyone. And my God, 3 episodes. And we've recorded them all in like a week. So I feel like I've seen more of you guys than my family this week, man. What's going on?
Yeah, I think that's about right.
Yes, if you're watching this or you're listening to this back, you'll probably be seeing this like in the middle of May, which is really weird because it's April 26th today. So it's, trying to think of not talking too much about what's going on today because it's going to be old news by the time everybody sees this. Brilliant. So the first episode, obviously, we talked about what you can expect from Redline Sales and Business Podcast. Episode 1, you, me, and Shane talking about how cold emailing is dead. If you want to listen to the influencers and the gurus, but actually it's not. It's just kind of it's about how you do it. How you do it's changed massively, and a lot of the factors impacting on it are gone. And, even just this morning, like me and Antoine were talking before the show and a guy reached out to me offering the same services as what I actually run for Javelin Content Management. He was like, "Oh, I've figured out how you can get more views on your podcast, mate. And we'll take your videos and we'll chop it up into lots of different videos and put it out for you." Guys, that's literally what my business does. If you had a quick look at the website. So, yeah, just to underline that point, and I did reply back to the guy. I thought I was quite civil, to be fair. But his comment to me was more videos equals more views, and my response back to him was more qualification equals more wins. But do you know what, Antoine? Like I've been that guy. Exactly to what we said in episode 1, right? Is being that guy. I've been under pressure to deliver numbers, and I've just sent out blanket emails to people who probably didn't care about what I did. And it's super hard, to your point that we talked about, it's super hard to qualify people, build up a leads list, find the right businesses, understand your own brand, understand how to convey that in as few words as possible, how to approach people, how to get in the inbox and there's a million different things that you can take away from that. And the one thing that has changed the most over the last couple of years, though, it's been cold calling, right?
Yeah.
We had COVID. People moved to mobile because they're working from home. It became insanely easy to get hold of people, although they were always in between Teams meetings when you did. So it'd be interesting to hear, like, what's your experience and how things have changed over the last 2-3 years with COVID, and has that gone back to? Is there a new normal kind of appeared with that now? Is it more kind of to direct numbers for work phones, or is it still mobiles still work really well?
Yeah, and it's an interesting question that you raised, actually, because like you say, COVID happened, everyone's at home, being able to get through to people on their mobiles was the go-to, and I believe in many cases still is the go-to way of getting in touch with hard to reach busy people. But the fact does remain that there is a lot more awareness now of people, having their mobiles exposed to data platforms or to having their numbers scraped and being, kind of utilized by data platforms in order to help them sell their business, right? Which is obviously data and selling numbers. And so you do still get a lot of people that are quite offended when you call through to them on the mobile, because it might be their personal number that's been scraped or whatever the case may be. But I think that ideally, if you're a cold caller, I think maybe what I'm very blessed to have is the experience of mostly calling through to people in their offices or having to get through to switchboards or operator lines and, navigate my way through businesses, because it does give you a kind of different set of skills, which do enable you to, have conversations with gatekeepers, have conversations with people from different departments in order to, find out how you can get in touch with the named person. But ultimately, I think that the difficulty that most people have, even when they have a direct mobile number, is how to capture the attention of that person that establishes curiosity, establishes credibility, and essentially a form of trust in those open exchanges that allowed somebody to actually give you the time to speak. And I think that, selling off yesteryear, a lot of it when you got people on the phone was about, I, me, we are the best at doing everything. And this is what we're about. And this is how we're going to help you. And these are our customers. Whereas I feel now that, especially over the last 3-4 years, maybe more, but the messaging is shifting towards about the problem that people are facing and how that problem is impacting people, and whether or not that is something that is strong or compelling enough for them to have a conversation about the potential help that that seller can offer. And I think that that's really where a lot of the top performing salespeople that are using the phone as their priority method of outreach are seeing major success over those that aren't.
So there's a problem though, right? That's all fair and well and great. But if you're so a lot of the businesses doing the cold outreach are predominantly tech businesses, small businesses that are starting up, that are scaling, that are growing, that are, to the point we discussed in the last episode, pre-Series A. And at that point, you don't have a big sales team, you don't have an experienced sales team, and probably don't have a lot of budget either. So, having been through that process myself, it's kind of, I was the SDR for the whole business with no experience whatsoever. I had to figure it out as I went along. There's a lot of noise out there for those people who were in that position, who were trying to lead that, right? There's a lot of influencers. We were talking about courses for salespeople before. How, if you're in that position, either as, let's say, two different positions, right? One is the leader of that team, of the business, who's not necessarily a salesperson themselves, but want to get a salesperson in. What do you recommend that they do first? We'll come back to the salesperson in a second.
So, I mean, I think personally, where some of the challenges lie is that you feel like you've got to piece together something to then get out and speak to people about for them to come into your sales funnel. So you're concocting a story, or you're concocting some compelling reason for people to speak to you and how your business is going to make a massive impact on them. But you don't know. And that's the underlying factor. You just don't know, because what you're probably doing is you're getting a list from a data provider against the people that you think should be buying your service or you believe you should be targeting. Then you're creating that story and you're going out and you're trying to get people to buy from you, rather than trying to get a small group of people that you think could be of value or could benefit from the service that you offer, and going out and asking some questions, having a conversation. I'm doing a little bit of research. We're launching this product into the market. I'm just unsure about how it sits with people such as yourself. Just curious if you could take maybe 5 minutes to spend some time with me and help me understand this, what you guys are doing over there and the impact it's having on. Every conversation is geared towards push in order to get a deal, rather than what can we actually learn about our market and about the people that we believe are the right fit for us, so that we can really start to tailor and iterate and tweak the message that goes out to people, so that we do find, number one, the right audience to speak with. And when, upon finding that right audience, we have the right type of things to talk to them about. So that kind of process, I feel, is missing. I can definitely testament to that personally, right? Because I've run a business before. It's the second business I'm running. At the beginning, it was very much the same for us as well. I'm not, infallible, and I'm not some guru that's not, seeing these mistakes happen. But being able to understand, okay, well, actually, if I were to do things over again, how would I do it? I'd take a smaller segment. I'd take a smaller slice. I'd speak with people that I can see on LinkedIn. They're either buying these services, or they've been previous buyers of these services, or they are of a company who I believe would use this type of service. And I would reach out, not in a way to sell, but in a way to actually understand.
There's a problem with that approach, and is the temptation that even though you claim to be doing a research call, in the back of your mind, there's a little tiny voice going, but this guy could be a customer. This lady could be a customer. And you've got to resist that temptation to turn that research call into a sales pitch, because that's what happens. And I see people start out with really good intentions, like what you've just said, like, let's do some research, let's talk to people, find out what resonates, what doesn't. And then you find yourself 10 minutes into the call, knee deep in that sales pitch, delivering what you said. Like, oh yeah, you want research. Oh, of course. So you've got to be, that's the pitfall with that approach is you're perfectly right in what you're saying. Like, so you should be doing that. Just make sure there's no pressure.
I would absolutely agree, but I would say that comes down to the discipline, right? And it comes down to your focus for that call. You do have to resist the temptation to go and pitch your services, because that's not what the call is for. If you're using those calls in a way, let's just say, for example, right? You spend the first 4 weeks before you do anything, just reaching out to your audience to have conversations, right? That's not going to start with them asking you what you do if you're asking questions that enable them to start really getting a feel for what they're doing right now around that particular problem, what they've seen, what challenges they've come across before, whether it doesn't have an impact at all and why that doesn't have an impact, where they've seen these things go wrong, how often these things come up, all these things, right? You're just getting into a conversation with somebody. There's that human element. People love to talk about themselves, what they're doing, why they're doing it. You can draw those passions out. And it can be 10 minutes that you're on a call with somebody before they even ask what you do, if you manage that call in the right way. So my point is that if you maintain the focus of those calls and you really kind of, frame your questions or put your questions in a way that is understanding all about their world and their world in accordance with these types of services and the impact that it's had on them in the past when they've used them, and what they would need to do in the future for those services to have a huge impact, and all these types of things, right? If you can nail that, then 2 weeks later or 3 weeks later, when you do go back to them, they're going to remember the call, number one, because you took an interest in them. In between that time, maybe you've connected on LinkedIn, maybe you've seen a couple of their posts, maybe you've gone and, liked a couple of what they were saying, commented on some of the posts that they've been in or the threads that they've been in. And then you reach out and you engage and you say, hey, you might remember we had a call a few weeks ago. It was really interesting when we spoke because you mentioned this, and this has been a really big annoyance for you. It just so happens that this is what we're doing with the new business. It would be of interest to speak a little bit further. You'll probably get you get much better traction from that than you would do if you were to just bang a list of people and try and pitch them, features and benefits of your product when they've never heard of you at all.
It's almost like doing a discovery calls first phase, right? It's like taking that first chunk. So imagine that they've already come to you and said that they're interested in your services. You're no longer trying to get them interested in your services, but you're trying to find out whether they're a good fit or not. And that you're doing it the reverse way around. You're trying to figure out whether your product's a good fit for their problems. So you're doing it kind of from the opposite angle, but the same questions. And I actually find, for anybody who's like want to do network-based sales, I actually find that that's the exact approach that I use, and it works perfectly. I talk with the person and get to know them and talk about their family and their interests and their hobbies and what they do for a living and the bits that they love and the bits that they don't love about their job. And after 25 minutes, I find that the inevitable question then comes, so what do you do? Because we've talked for 25 minutes about me. You do. And at that point, it's okay now because you've been given permission to open the doors.
Yeah.
And I'll go one step further. Don't blurb your features and benefits in 5 minutes because it's not going to work. If that's the invite that you get, ask the permission. Do you have a hard stop at 1:30 or the hour, or can I go on? Because it's probably going to take me a little bit longer than 5 minutes to tell you a little bit about what we do. And most people are going to say, yeah, carry on like I'm good. If they give you that permission to carry on, then don't spill the features and benefits. Like it's really tempting to just, so what we've got is we've got 15 dashboards to do this, that, and the other. We've got proactive analytics and AI that brings in this, that. No, stop. Tell them how you solve the problems they've just told you about. Take 2 or 3 of the things that they've told you about. Oh, interesting. I know you said X, Y, and Z. Well, actually, we solved that. by doing this. If you'd
Yeah.
like to know a bit more about it, let's have another call. And that's all you need. So,
No,
I do a lot of network-based selling on behalf of the people. It's not even my business a lot of the time. I'm just trying to help people connect with
Yeah.
other business.
Yeah.
I think that's, you've absolutely hit the nail on the head. But I mean, so let's take another step back, kind of looking at it from the salesperson's perspective. You're your first salesperson in a new business. You're relatively unexperienced. Where would you be going to find out how to learn your trade? Because probably it's not going to be sanctioned by your business. So you're going to have to learn it on the side of what you're doing. You're just going to be expected to hit numbers. How do you avoid falling into the pitfalls of volume emails, volume calling, and not really getting anywhere?
It's another good point, right? And I feel like there's a number of different ways that salespeople today, and they have so much more access to sales tools today, right? And to people working in sales today. You on LinkedIn, there's thousands of sales trainers, sales influencers. Do you know what I mean? There's people in AE roles, SDR roles that have got built personal brands, and they're talking about what they do every day, right? And there's a lot of people out there that are not favoring the high volume approach, right? The kind of scattergun approach to pitching your business or pitching your services, because a lot of them have done it and they've understood, okay, I've worked in this way and I saw this set of results. And now I've worked in a completely different way and I'm seeing better results. And that different way is to actually be a lot more purposeful, have a lot more intent about who I'm actually going after, the problem that this persona is most likely to have, where my solution offering will actually fit. And so I think a bit of both in the beginning is going to be very, very important, because number one, you have to build a thick skin, right? You're going to get a lot of no's in. That's a fact. And it has been ever since I've been on the phone and, before me, right? You're going to get a lot
No,
more
if you're
no's than
lucky,
you get
right?
yeses in this. Yeah, right. But get those no's getting those no's is vital, because it allows you to say, okay, where did I kind of go wrong on that call, or what was it that prompted them to put the phone down on me, or okay, I got through to the next part of my pitch after the introduction, and then the phone went down. Was it my tone? What was it that wasn't quite right? If you're getting through the actual message and everybody's saying no, then maybe it's my message that's not quite working out. You have to be a detective, right, in a way, when you're going about your outreach, because you know you have to know, okay, if I'm going to do this at volume and I'm going to have as many conversations as possible, those conversations are going to get me to the end result of a much more on topic and on point pitch than if I speak to hardly anyone. But at the same time, you've then got to be able to say, okay, great. Now, how do I segment my data and my prospects into a way that I don't burn through a whole sector of leads, right? And at that point, I've got nobody else to speak to, but I'm actually being able to gather vital information from each of these different areas and being able to match to each persona the things that most resonate with them when I call. So again, you can go on LinkedIn. There's people selling courses, time for a dozen nowadays. You can find yourself, go out and engage with people. Find people that are doing the job that you do, right? Ask for help. Asking for help goes a long, long way, especially when you're in the community with people. That help can lead you into dark social rooms, right? WhatsApp groups. It can lead you onto, Slack groups. There's loads of Slack channels where people are helping each other out. You've got communities like Rev Genius, for example, right? That is new SDRs that are coming together, that are learning from others. And these are the places where you can really help to, I guess, propel your knowledge, and also the way that you go about conducting your cold calls, rather than if you were left to your own devices, just because somebody that manages you or somebody that employed you tells you this is the playbook, this is what works, you go and hit it, and you find out, well, for you and maybe your style and maybe your personality, that's not working at all. So I think uncovering that information about yourself, doing some of the high volume stuff to understand how those messages land, how you deal with rejection, how you need to carry yourself and pick yourself up for every call, and then tying into that, how you can be more, I guess, kind of focused and targeted and specific when you're reaching out to people is where you can marry the two and then help to get yourself a lot further along the road.
I think there's probably also an element of not everybody who gets involved in sales should be in sales in that sort of really front line. Maybe it is that you're more suited to the AE job without having gone through the SDR job necessarily, because you're more relationships, you're more like, you're suited better to having a warm conversation with somebody who you've already been spoken to, and you can't deal with that rejection and that, the constant battle with, like, that's another, I catch myself, right? I'd be looking at my list of prospects and I'd be looking at my numbers thinking, I just need to make another 80 calls today and I'm done. And most of them won't answer. So let's just ring them. And that's totally the wrong, I once, I once rang and got through to the CEO for a very well-known toy store in the UK. I rang him and spoke to him on his personal phone. I made the big mistake of not expecting to answer, because no CEO of that size business ever answers their phone. And I bluffed it, man. I absolutely stumbled over my words. It sounded like I've never spoken to anybody on a phone before, man. I absolutely fluffed it. And the guy hung up on me. And I just sat there and went, yeah, I deserve that. I earned that, because I made the big mistake of not expecting someone to pick up the phone. But to your point around the dark social rooms, like, absolutely, like, I've joined 2 or 3 in the last year or so, and I've learned more from those rooms than I've learned in my entire 3 years that I've been doing sales. It's been phenomenal. It's definitely, speak to people, get involved in them. There's thousands of people in the Slack channels, so everybody knows someone who's in them. Just ask them.
Absolutely. It's just accelerated learning, isn't it? You've got access to many minds, right? And you've got access to many minds with many, many years of experience that have gone through the different kind of iterations of sales over the decades, right? You've got people that were cold calling back in the early 2000s, right? In the late 90s. You've got some of them that are still calling today. You don't keep on calling and seeing success after all of that amount of time if you're not able to change and adapt your game, right? Because what worked back then doesn't necessarily work now. So being able to learn from people that are doing that, being able to learn from people that are volume calling on these parallel dialers and AI dialers, right? They're pumping out 200 dials an hour. I used to manually dial 200 dials a day, right? So, the technology is really starting to speed things up for people. So now you can be speaking to 8, 12 people in an hour versus maybe speaking to 8 people, 12 people in a whole day, if you were lucky. So, like, that accelerated level of exposure to conversations, to listening to call recordings, right? Getting in rooms with people, and they're sharing rooms, they're sharing call recordings. You get into that nitty gritty of, oh wow, like, this person said this and they got this response. Or, these types of things is really, really massive in the development of any new salesperson, because it's all about that click, right? It's all about, okay, I see difficulty in doing this. I see the challenge in doing this, but actually everybody else has got the same thing. Everybody else is doing the same thing. And it's just about me getting better at doing the thing and committing myself to the thing that will help get me those better results. Because like you say, I think it's about being really intentional about that action. So if I'm going to make cold calls for the next hour, I'm going to make cold calls. I'm going to turn my notifications off. My phone is going to be on silent, and I'm going to be focused on that list, because I have to be ready for the moment that somebody does pick up to step into action, right? Because you're an actor in many ways, I believe, when you're in sales. And that is, as soon as that ball goes, you have to be on and you have to be in character. And if you're not, then it's likely you're going to get the phone hung off on you by the CEO of a managing company, right? So I think that, people, it's being really intentional, knowing what you're going to say. You have the right list of people to call and you execute. And then that is the way that you start to see, okay, what are my responses? What are my conversions? Listen to yourself, hear how you reacted, hear the things that you said that people kind of, grimaced at or laughed at, and then start to take more of the things that work and ditch the things that don't.
I love the idea that back to what you said, you've got to be an investigator, right? You've got to be a researcher. Well, I think there's probably a bit of a conflict of personalities for a lot of people who get involved in sales. So
Yeah.
a lot of the people that I've spoken to, and certainly from an older era, they were very much a more extrovert veneer on the surface, whether they're extroverts or not. Like, I'm an introvert, believe it or not. I mean, I'm in hundreds of podcasts. I'm an introvert. I don't get energy from talking to large amounts of people. I don't mind these sorts of
Yeah.
situations where it's you, me, and one other. Like, I can deal with that. But I'm not an extrovert. But where those extroverts exist, I think there's a real danger that the other guys that will naturally not want to do that research, they'll be really good at the sales calls naturally, but will struggle with the research and the science part of it. But you're absolutely right. I think the crucial bit that a lot of people miss is, you talk about knowing your numbers. It's not just about knowing your numbers. And you might, as a salesperson, have to go out of your way to create those sales numbers where they don't exist. If your leadership team are recording the wrong information and challenging you on the wrong metrics, start recording what matters.
Exactly.
Because you've got to get yourself in that psychological place. You've got to be able to understand what works and what doesn't. Using their numbers might not be the best route for you to be able to deliver results from. But if you're keeping track of the numbers that matter for you, whether it's a piece of paper, whether it's an Excel spreadsheet, it doesn't really matter. You go into big businesses that got really nice established SaaS sales software that logs every metric from one end of the room to the other. Brilliant. The majority of the time, if you're going in, you go into a startup, you're probably dialing from your CRM, right? You've got a dialer that doesn't allow for like recording or anything like that. You just kind of go in along as you go. That's really daunting. So make sure that you recorded things like how many calls have I made today, how many picked up, of the ones that did pick up, what was the reason for them hanging up on me, where I got interest, what was I saying when I got interested, and just make time to record those bits, because understanding of that'll make you better. I think exactly what you said, Antoine. Everybody sells differently as well.
Yeah.
Crucial.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think we need to celebrate that in sales, right? We need to celebrate the fact that people sell differently. Not everybody is going to come into the company, be given a script, and all going to sound like robots of that business, saying exactly the same thing, exactly the same way. It just doesn't work. The way that I speak versus the way that you speak versus the way that Shane versus the way that somebody else speaks is not necessarily going to carry itself in the same way when you're saying those words over the phone, because maybe they're not familiar to you in that way. Those words put together in that sequence does not help your brain compute that into a believable, kind of outreach. And so I think that it's important to let people be a little bit flexible in how they deliver their message, to inject their personality, to be able to utilize the vehicles that best showcase that personality, whether it be I'm doing a video message, or whether it be I'm sending out, I'm doing a cold call, or I'm sending an email, whatever that case might be, right? It's to be able to express yourself in the way that allows that message to carry itself, that resonates perfectly with your prospect. And so I think that, we can do a lot of guiding, and we can do a lot of mentoring, and people will naturally gravitate to where they're good at, right? And wherever you gravitate towards, double down on that. Okay. There's, like you say, people that are introverted that we're always typically told, yeah, you're not really going to be a good fit for sales because you've got to be gregarious, you've got to be outgoing, you've got to be, like the life and soul of the party and everything. But a lot of introvert sellers are some of the most devastating sellers that you will come across, because they're very, very intentional. They're very focused. The way that they deliver their message is precise. They do things that are in the right way for them. They're very analytical. They're very smart about the way that they go out and speak to people. And, a lot of the time, let's be honest, like I grew up in and started selling in an era where you might have a big mouth and you might be all cocky and confident, but the fact is of the matter that you weren't. It wasn't intelligent, what you were saying. It wasn't that you were really understanding of your customer or asking the right questions. It's just that you had the balls to go out and get on the phone and make a lot of noise, right? So I think that that kind of idea of a great salesperson it should be outdated. And I think that there's a lot of evidence to really prove that to the contrary as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Completely agree. A couple of things that I'm going to leave. So we're drawn towards the half hour mark. So I'm going to let people go and go to the boys' room or wherever they need to go now to finish listening to the podcast. First thing is, for me, one thing that I've found useful in recent months is, to your point, when I'm looking at things like a script or an email where what I'm writing is somebody else's words and it don't quite feel right, I've actually found a lot of use in using things like ChatGPT to
Yeah.
brainstorm ways that I can say it that might
Yeah.
give me an idea. Because sometimes I come up against that I call it writer's block, right? Doesn't
Mhm.
sound, I haven't got a clue how else I would say it. How else would you say it? You can either go off and ask one of those chat rooms, absolutely fine. Like those guys they give you opinions and ideas all day long. Or if you want something right now, then just bung it in GPT-4 and ask it for 3 other ways to say the same thing. Don't
Yeah.
just say what it comes out with. Veneer it, put it your way,
Yeah.
but use it as inspiration. That's what I'm a big fan of. And the other thing is,
Yeah.
this is the end of episode 3. Thank you very much for joining us so far for the first 3 podcast episodes. I think we've had a fantastic time recording them. I hope everybody enjoys listening or watching as much as we have. And next week starts, we're going to get some guests on. So we've got a few guests appearing over the next few weeks. There's some big names and big faces coming over the coming months. If I'm going to recommend anything to anyone, this is a bit of a hint as to somebody who might be coming on the show. If you're a new sales rep and you want some reading material that I think is absolutely beneficial, there's a lot of stuff out there. It's just like non-actionable. It's great, but it's just, you just hearing other people's opinions all the time. There's 2 or 3 books that I would recommend wholeheartedly. But the 2 that's the top of my reading list, I'm going to upset some people by saying this because I'm going to leave some people out, unfortunately. But The Transparency Sale by Todd Caponi, which he also, there's a follow-on book, The Transparent Sales Leader. Todd's approach to transparency is amazing. And I think it leads us into a whole new era for sales selling. If you don't know who Todd is, go away and look for him. He's a former CRO for Salesforce back in the day when it was first set up. And he's trained a lot of other really successful salespeople ever since then. And the other thing that really changed the game for me was Fanatical Prospecting by Jeff Blount. Don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Fanatical Prospecting, game changing.
One more dial, one more call.
One more. I love that. I love that part. It's really, and I think it's actionable, right? There's a lot of stuff in there that's really actionable that you can take away and learn.
Yeah, definitely. I would agree.
Perfect. All right. Thanks for joining me, Antoine. And
always a pleasure.
By the time this airs, you'll be a dad again.
Hey, I'm back.
All right. Take care. Thanks, everyone.